Good afternoon. I am Bipin Preet Singh. I am founder and CEO of MobiKwik. It's a company I created about 15 years ago. And today I am here to talk about my life. And more importantly, in this age, in this world of uncertainty, in this age where technology is taking over everything, what is it that you think you can take and do over the next few years to become successful, where most of your work, especially as engineers, might actually be done by AI? Going back, before I came to IIT, I was born in the eastern part of India in a city called Rourkela, where I actually started, and I was an average student living in a lower middle class family. And in every person's life, a time comes when they realize they want to become good at something. And I'm sure a lot of you might have experienced it. And it came in my life when I was a student in grade 6 and trying to learn about algebra. A lot of you might know about the formula a cube plus b cube plus whatever equal to a plus b cube. I remember I had a midsem exam, and I went and told my mom, crying, that I am not able to crack this, that I am not able to understand what all of this is. And while mom, she used to help me until earlier grades, she couldn't help me out. So she told me to go and find someone who was studying in grade 6 and take help from him. And I went and did that. But I was really, really very upset that day because I realized that I might end up actually failing tomorrow. And that's when I decided that I'm not going to let this happen again. And what I did, I actually started taking some tuitions to get better at maths. And it took me about a year, and I became the best math students in my class. And from then onwards, till I passed out of grade 12, I scored 100% in maths in every single exam. That was the day my life changed. I didn't realize it at that time, but now I do. And how it changed? Because I had made up my mind that I'm going to become good at something. I got a spark inside me that I'm going to become good at something. And at the same time, I learned about something called IIT, that something called IIT exists. And if I'm good at maths, I should go and study at IIT. And I started studying. I was good at maths. I was a topper in the class. I gave my JE. I got, a decent rank. Not in the top 1,000. I was in the top 1,200. But guess what? I couldn't actually go to IIT. And I didn't actually have the money to pay for the fees for IIT. So then I decided to study at one of the colleges here in Delhi, a top 10 college in the country. But still, the dream was there, somewhere inside me, that I have to get into IIT. So I wrote JE again. This time, I was much more calmer, much less stressful. And guess what? I cracked top 300. And I studied electrical engineering in this exact campus where you are sitting. I spent my 4 years here doing academically well. I was not a great all-rounder. I didn't participate in sports. I was what you would call an insecure and introvert. I didn't live in the hostel much. And a lot of people thought that I was a very reserved person. And I was reserved because, I felt that all these students who come and study here, many of them coming with good means and a lot of confidence. I cannot stand anywhere close to them. They are so good in sports. They are so good in extracurriculars. I was good in academics, but not necessarily good in all of these things. And I was not a topper in the class either. So I was fairly underconfident. If you asked my batch of 2002, for any student who would ever start a company and take that company to IPO, I would be the last person to get that vote. But I carried on. When the year that I passed on, 2001, 2002, was actually a very tough year. 2001, The world had changed thanks to 9/11. Jobs were tough to come by. I actually got a job outside uh, the campus at a company called Intel. Then I worked at a company which you might have heard of called Nvidia. While I was working there, however, I learned about myself a little bit and about the role that I was playing while actually doing a job. And that's when I decided, what do I want to do in my life? Of course, I was making good money, and money was something that was important and is important still today. But there was a gap. There was a gap in my expectations. There was something missing in my life. And even though I got admits in a few schools, I wanted to do MBA in US, I decided not to go. And we are talking about the year 2008, 2009, just after the great financial crisis. And at that time, I decided that I'm going to chuck it all, leave my career, and start MobiKwik. If you ask people around me, this was like jumping into the well or jumping into the ocean where you don't know how to swim. And it was that hard. It was completely an unknown world. I was an engineer. I was an introvert. I was antisocial. I only knew coding. I didn't know marketing. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about how the real world even works. But I decided that, okay, let me put up a website, and maybe people will start coming. Of course, I didn't have any money, so we set up a table in our living room, I and my co-founder. And we used to put our laptops there. That was the only asset I had. Write code and see if any people are doing transactions. And in the night time, we would read blogs. Blogs about what's happening in Silicon Valley. The success stories about how someone started a company and within 2 years, 3 years, they sold it for $100 million and got so rich. And we were fascinated by it. I was fascinated by it. Things started moving when I one day decided that this is enough. There is nothing happening here. I need to figure out a business model. I need to figure out some business and do something which feels like a real company. Or else, I go back into the job market and get a job on my own. And I decided that, it's enough sitting at home, reading blogs, and being lazy with your work. Maybe what I need, is just to go to an office. And even though we couldn't afford it, I got one guy, one person, to whom we promised that we were going to pay you some salary just for managing the operations. And that was what triggered the change. The moment we got an office, I realized that now this is no longer a hobby. It's a serious business. Because we have to pay someone's salary, however small it is. And for that, you have to make money. Otherwise, you have to close the business. And I believe that really created the momentum where from the first employee, we got the second, from second, the third, and fourth. We started creating momentum, which is so important in life. I started building MobiKwik. It took me a lot of ups and downs. I had to change myself. I was self-aware. I learned. I realized the gaps that I had within myself. And I started working on those skills where, even though it felt unnatural to me, selling them a dream about a company which could one day do an IPO, whereas myself, at that time, I couldn't imagine how it could happen because the company was barely even making any money. But I forced myself. And then as people came, they naturally got attracted to the mission. Because I realized that time that life is nothing if you don't have a mission. Life is not about making money. Life is not about success. Life is about having a mission. And it could be your personal mission, it could be a professional mission. But if you don't have a mission, life is not very meaningful. And the second thing is, everyone gets attracted when you have a mission. And as we went forward, we faced so many difficulties. We were not the biggest company in our space. We are a fintech company, we do a lot of things in fintech, but we were not the biggest. We are still not the biggest. We are not the most successful, but we are amongst the few who managed to do an IPO. Ultimately, what counts is, if you see the world's biggest success stories, not just in business, by the way, but I would argue in the entire human civilization, it is about self-belief. It is about believing that you can achieve something which has never been done before. And that is what kept us going. And COVID happened, our business really took a big hit in terms of the business. It was going very nicely until then. And then post-COVID, we decided that we have to go to the markets. We made our first attempt to do an IPO because we wanted to raise money. And we had set a very high bar in terms of what our expectations were. What is the valuation that I want for my company? Because really, until then, what I felt like that the company that you're building, the work that you're doing, ultimately is about the valuation you create. And if you've ever heard about startups, that's all you read about. So we went to the markets, we tried, and before we could get it done, the markets changed. Someone in our space blew up. The markets changed. The markets turned south. The markets became negative. And obviously, the investors said, this is not happening. You cannot do an IPO. At least not on these numbers. It was, again, a moment where, after having done this for 12 years, it felt like, is this all going to end in nothing? But the thing that we did is, we decided to again buckle down and said, the only thing we can do is to survive. No matter how, but we have to survive. And that's the story of human endeavor as well. You just have to survive when faced with tough situations. We took debt from banks, we borrowed from money from small investors. We did whatever it took. I and my co-founder called up anyone who was anyone and said, give us some money because we want to ensure that this company continues. We did that. In fact, we survived the tough times. And as soon as you survive the tough times, the good times also come. And they came. Our business grew. We became the first company in our space to become profitable. And on top of that, once we became profitable, again, there were murmurs of an IPO. We filed for an IPO in Jan of 2024. And again, an event happened in the market in a couple of months. And the regulators started asking, your business models are flawed because in your space, the companies which are there, they're doing wrong things. They're getting pulled up by the regulator. So how can you do an IPO? We cannot allow you to do an IPO. And this went on. We tried to explain we are different. Of course, I can't talk about all the details, but it took us about 9 months to actually get the nod. As soon as we got the nod for an IPO, the regulator started taking action against more and more companies in our space. And the investors started asking us, do you really want to do an IPO? I said, yes, it's our dream. He said, but look what's happening. Maybe you should take some more time. We said, no, we want to do it. They said, we can't do it at this valuation. We said, we just want to go forward because we know what we have built, the business that we have built, is on very strong foundation. And we want the world to see this foundation. And we have to go and get this company listed. So, with a lot of effort, late night calls, just begging a few people, even, we got the IPO done. Our IPO opened some 40 to 50% up on the day of listing and went up almost 100% just soon after listing. It's considered one of the most successful listings, IPOs, in our space. And the reason I'm telling you this is, when I had to go on stage and deliver my speech for getting the IPO done, I didn't remember all the good things. I actually remembered all the points, all the situations which almost killed the company, which almost killed 12 to 15 years of my effort, of my life. And I created this insight that at the end of the day, failure is something that is part and parcel of life. In fact, failure is normal. And if you consider failure as normal, rather than being hooked on to being successful all the time, then it's possible to create a huge impact in whatever you do. Because at the end of the day, we are here on this earth only for a limited period of time. As I speak, my body is failing. My body clock is running. So what am I saving up success for? Ultimately, everything has to go. And therefore, no failure is bigger than that. And any failure that the world can give me, I can take it and I can convert it into the success that I want. And that's the message I want to leave to you. Thank you.